Hello, this is Remleiz from 4K News. I'm sorry, I can't do that straight. I can't do an impersonation of Remleiz straight. Um, so today I wanted to discuss a little something that I've been thinking about. You see, I like Warhammer 40k and Warhammer Fantasy and Age of Sigmar to a small degree, but the point is I like Warhammer 40k. I think it's a fun setting and it has some very deep, interesting lore. However, I have noticed this one trend. A lot of people who are very into Warhammer 4K, particularly the One Mind Syndicate, great YouTube channel they are. People like them. No offense to you guys. I would love to meet you guys one day, but these people, people in Warhammer 4K in general, have a tendency to assume that Warhammer 4K is one of the most powerful settings out there. Like it could beat any other setting in a straight fight. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think that's true. I don't think Warhammer 40k is as powerful as people like to say it is. Now, granted, it's still pretty powerful. It has some stuff that would absolutely wreck us today, but it does lead some questions, like, how powerful is something? So, I want to discuss something today. Mainly, and this is a way of explaining I thought would be interesting, how useful would a Space Marine be in modern militaries? Like if today, modern day America, China, Russia, wherever you live, we suddenly gain the technology to build a Space Marine. However, I'm going to make clear a few caveats on this. One, we're assuming base stock Space Marines. It's something like the Ultramarines or other uncorrupted gene seed. So we're not assuming like the Space Wolves or Blood Angels, which would change the game. Second, we're not giving them any of the technology that Space Marine is usually equipped with. I know this is going to sound weird, but I do want to judge this fairly. So, they don't have the Black Carapace armor or power armor. They don't have the bolt guns, don't have their rocket launchers, don't have any of the vehicles, just Space Marine. And all the technology needed to make a Space Marine. So, we're just looking at them, like, if you give them modern equipment and put them in modern battlefield situations, how useful is a Space Marine? Well, we should probably, of course, start with what is a Space Marine good for, like in modern military sense. But first, we should probably do into Warhammer 40k. In Warhammer 40k, Space Marines are elite soldiers fighting for the Imperium. They are generally stronger, faster, and just better than a human in every statistical way, except for the fact they have maybe some psychological issues and physically cannot reproduce. Seems like a massive oversight, if you ask me. But, you know, what do I know? So, in Warhammer 40k, the lore is actually kind of inconsistent of how powerful a Space Marine is. It really depends on what you're going by. For instance, in the tabletop game, a Space Marine isn't terribly more powerful than an Imperial Guardsman. Now, there are, of course, differences based on additions, but this is kind of true. Even in lore, the Imperial Guard regularly beat the Space Marines in fights. Now, to be clear, Imperial Guard are very close to modern military. They don't exactly follow modern conventions, of course, but the fighting tactics we'd be very familiar with. They have normal humans with guns, they have tanks, they have artillery, they fight pretty conventionally. Now, granted, they aren't like any modern military, they often mishmash, but they fight in human ways. They fight in ways we would understand, ways that if we encountered them as a modern military, we would see them as a military of weird technological standpoint, but definitely fine with conventional tactics. Space Marines are a little bit different. The average Space Marine chapter only has 1,000 members. This makes them elite. They are, strictly speaking, in-universe supposed to be elite soldiers. But what happens if you slot them in modern battlefield? Well, let's look at them. We really have to go bit by bit of what makes a Space Marine a Space Marine. Now, I could be cheap and just tell you, oh, they're stronger and faster, but I'm going to go step by step. A Space Marine, what makes a person into a Space Marine, or at least is made up of 19 pieces, or 19 augmentations that turns your average everyday Joe into a living demigod. Or at least the lore says so, and I'm going to go each and every one. Now, as a note, there is often a lot of training, drug cocktails, and everything else you'd imagine in between all this stage, but there is some truth to it. But this is kind of like the general, this is like saying, oh yes, the standard US soldier is equipped with this gun or this armament, not going through the individual training days. Step 1, the average kid, who ages normally 14 to 16, we'll get into that later, is given their secondary heart. This does, well, exactly what you think it does. It allows for more blood pumping, and if the first heart goes down, the second heart can take its place. This is pretty self-explanatory, and though I'm not sure how you get that in there safely, it would pretty obviously have some benefits. If you've seen Doctor Who, you get kind of the idea. Having a secondary heart has some pretty big advantages, at least if you lose the first one. The second and third one, the osmosis and the warning, I'm not going to be able to pronounce half these words, so just go by number. The second and third are basically to make the skeletal system go stronger and bigger, and the muscular system go stronger and bigger, respectively. These do pretty much what we say. Now, the lore is a bit interesting how tall Space Marine is, especially if you start looking to other media. If we go by models, the Space Marine isn't that much taller than the average human. And then if you go by something like the video games, it could be different. Books portray it differently all the time. And, if you go by any lore, it's all over the place. But it's pretty safe bet that the average Space Marine is somewhere between 6 to 8 feet tall. It's a pretty safe bet. And yes, I know since Games Workshop has said in England they use the metric system, but I don't care because I'm American. So I will use the imperial system for all things. Okay, so that's all good and good. So that has some pretty obvious benefits. Now, in our real-world society, doing stuff like this would have some minor detriments in blood flow, maybe at a certain point, and could lead to some issues, but stuff like the secondary heart and later augmentations might keep that from being a male issue. The fourth one is the who bloody writes these things? Basically just improves the blood flow system. Like I said, fixing one of those issues I mentioned. Basically, it makes blood flow more efficient and all that jazz. It's pretty self-explanatory and has obvious benefits. The fifth one is the Lasman organs. Like, once again, number 5. Basically, it allows for rapid regeneration. It creates scar tissue almost instantly near a site of a wound. This has some pretty obvious benefits that I don't think I have to go into. 6. The Kesmanian node. It basically allows a Space Marine to temporarily shut off parts of the brain that aren't currently being used, allowing them to rest as if they were sleeping. This allows a Space Marine to go, well, sometimes days or even longer without actually sleeping or resting. It has obvious benefits. It's pretty self-explanatory once again. 7 is the I can't say it right. Predigestive stomach. Basically, it allows the individual to eat things that would normally be unedible or just not nutritious. Basically, it just means you can eat rocks. Probably literally. 8 is the I can't say these words right. Number 8, the organ that absorbs genetic material from animal tissue, allowing basically the Marine can eat the flesh of something and then it gains some of its memories. Ignoring the ethical issues of that for a second, it has only, I can think of, very limited applications. It could theoretically be useful in the sense of eat the corpse of someone that you just killed to learn the location of the base, but it's also because you could just get that same thing from interrogating someone, so it has limited effect and moral issues abound. Multi-lung, the third one, basically is just a third lung, allowing you to breathe in toxic atmospheres, that kind of stuff. It's pretty self-explanatory. 10, the Asmodru, I think I'm saying that right. Basically, it increases the human's ability to see, but it's mostly used in setting to allow for other augmentations that are not part of the standard Space Marine set. The Lemon's Ear. Basically, it just improves the hearing, and it makes them just like vertigo, nausea, etc. Number 12. The Sasman membrane, a brain plant that requires meditation and training to function. Allows the Space Marine to enter a station of suspended animation, surviving if they would be even wounded mortally. Basically, oh, you're almost dead? Go into a trance and we'll get you back later. Because I am reading off of a wiki page here, partially to help me, because there's no way in a million years I'm remembering all of this off the top of my head. 13, Megalochronia. Basically, it protects the user from dangerous ultraviolet light and other forms of radiation as well. It would have limited use. Organic kidney. Basically, supercharged that basically make a new kidney that deals with toxins. It basically just allows for quickly detoxing. It's pretty self-explanatory. 15, Neurogen, a mouth cavity that basically lets you spit poison spit acid at people. Can break you even on chains over time. It has its uses, mainly because you would have a pretty difficult time getting rid of someone's mouth. So, I guess you could gag it, but even then I could get issues. 17. Oh, wait, no, I got it right. Pringers. Basically, this gene seed basically allows for more Space Marines to be made. Basically, it implants 2 organs. They can be harvested from a dead Space Marine, makes more Space Marines. You get the idea. This is not really, and particularly, I don't want to say important, but it's one of those things that isn't going to help us in this scenario, especially because modern day society that is capable of technological advancement and not staying in the Dark Ages and calling everything heresy would just find a better way to do this. And the Black Carapace, a device that basically allows your power suit to become one with you, so you can work 100% effectively in your suit. This isn't necessary to use power armor, but it is somewhat useful. There is also absolutely no reason to remember this because they don't have a power armor in this idea we're going for in modern military situations, so just basically ignore it. Okay, so now we've run over all the basics of the Space Marine. We basically can get a pretty safe rundown of their abilities, which is also pretty obvious. They're stronger, faster, smarter. They're basically just humans plus. The only real disadvantage they once again have is the fact is that the process that makes them has a very low success rate, for some reason, and they can't breed normally. Oh, and also, I guess they're also limited to only males, but this is because the Emperor makes the genetics off himself. And I imagine if we developed this in the real world, this wouldn't have this limitation. But there's no way to say it. I'm saying straight from 40k lore here. So, how would they be useful in modern militaries? Simply put, not a whole lot. They wouldn't be useless. It's not like if we just given a division that we wouldn't find a use for them. But there is a certain limitation in the fact that they are still just people plus, which is good, but it's not extraordinary. You might be bigger, stronger, and faster than the average person, but a tank run will still blow you up. And yes, I'm aware some fans will then say, but Space Marines can show off entire bullets or weapon attacks. Well, yes, they can in their armor. They don't have special armor here. In this setting or idea, they're armed with only Kevlar and whatever else we can cook up for them in modern military situations. They're using standard equipment, or at the very least what can be quickly engineered from it. They don't have bolt rounds. They don't got, well, whatever rocket launchers they have in Warhammer 40k, which I think just might be straight rocket launchers, and stuff like that. They don't have the tanks. They are playing straight by modern military equipment. And they could probably resist more damage than a normal human like ourselves could, but I don't think by an inhuman degree. They would just, especially because even with all of their fancy gear, like I said earlier, in the Warhammer K-Stand, the Imperial Guard, which is literally just normal humans for the most part, fighting with normal conventional tactics, have won against them. And yes, I know someone would say, but they have the numbers advantage. They do, but that is still a weakness. You might be the 10 best fighters in the universe, but if you're surrounded by 1,000 guards, you're still gonna die sooner or later. You just take down more of them with you. That is still a disadvantage, and even in our world, even with our improved technology, they would still suffer from being limited. And here's the real problem with Space Marine. Now, Space Marine would have some kind of niche uses. They don't need to sleep as much, they can eat basically anything, they can spit acid, they do have some fringe abilities that would provide some uses. Mostly, ironically, not the fringe ones, like I said, the ones you don't think about. Except for the one about eating people to gain their memories. I don't think that would fly. But here's the real thing that would limit a Space Marine. Is simply put, the morality of making one. Most nations in the modern world, at least in the Western one we know of, would not be generally willing to make a Space Marine. The process of making a Space Marine involves taking a 14 to 16-year-old, forcing them into trials and tribulations that often kill them, drug cocktails that are basically, that would literally be madness, and all these other things, and not to mention you're doing this to literal children. And yes, I know, yes, modern nations are capable of committing atrocities, but this will be something on a level we haven't seen before. Or at the very least, in ways that no modern government, with the possibility of something like China maybe, and Russia maybe, would be willing to do. America wouldn't do this, England wouldn't do this, France wouldn't do this, modern Germany wouldn't do this, no modern nation would do this. Well, with very few exceptions. And even then, the bonuses too are limited, especially because it takes years to make a Space Marine. Years. The average soldier, many soldiers only take 16 weeks to train. And granted, that's some time. It's not like you throw a civilian into the fire. But it's still a lot shorter than years. And once again, the ethical uses of using basically children in your mad science experiments would not fly very well. Now, granted, if we could engineer a way to not have to use basically kids to use it, and we could use older individuals, that would line up some of it. But you ask the question, is a human plus, is a slightly better human worth some worth years of training and development, when they could just as easily be taken out by a machine gun or by a normal person. It's truly a question of, is it worth it? And I don't think a Space Marine is. Maybe if you gave them some of their advanced equipment, but a Space Marine still isn't worth the cost. It's not worth the cost of the moral issues to build a Space Marine. Now, are some of them traits useful? Yes. But if they could come in an easier package, maybe they took less time, or didn't require children, or any number of things, they would be more useful. But fundamentally, a Space Marine on its own is not worth the cost of development. Because for the cost of one Space Marine, you could easily train entire squads of humans to just go fight that would easily outperform that one Space Marine just by how much of them there are. Yeah, it's not good for a Space Marine. It really isn't. A Space Marine without its technical equipment is just not useful in a modern battlefield situation. If you drop them like in Dark Age Europe, then they would be basically demigods on the battlefield. But in our modern world, it's just not useful. And you have to remember something else. Space Marines are almost always, if ever not, chosen from the best of humanity. They're chosen like the best, proudest young warriors they can find from savage, feral worlds. They're already above the average range of that human. They're already above most people in their age. They aren't like they're just dragging random people. And that plays a factor too, because then you have to factor how much of the Space Marine's skill and power and fine capabilities is because of their augmentations, or just because they were already a cut above the norm before anything. If they took someone like Steve Rogers' pre-serum, that might be more impressive, but it's not. And that's another thing, is that something like a super soldier from Captain America would be way more useful due to its ease of production and could turn the scrawniest soldier into a well, actually not even a soldier. Like, Captain America's not even capable of joining the army stands in World War II. And they could turn him into the America's greatest soldier with just a serum and in some cases maybe a tube overnight, pretty much, without maybe some basic training to boot. Now that would be something we'd find useful in our world, but a Space Marine isn't. It just isn't. Yeah, I'm gonna have to declare the Space Marine, without its technical equipment, unviable in a modern battlefield. Space Marine is simply unviable in modern warfare. It's not a viable situation, and would need some massive improvements to actually be useful. Yeah, I feel kind of upset. Honestly, I wish I could say the Space Marine would be super cool and powerful in the battlefield, and they would do better than people if, in certain situations, but not enough to justify their existence. No military would waste the time and effort it would take to build Space Marines when they could be doing literally anything else with that time. Yeah, I'm kind of sad about it, but it's just the truth. Now, if you want me to cover some other things from Warhammer 40k, or some other things from fiction, sci-fi particularly, I would love to do that. I plan to do some more. Maybe I'll cover these Space Marines' equipment and battlefield and equipment, like their vehicles, the actual armor and such, and see if that would improve the situation. I would be like you. Other facts from Warhammer 40k would be interesting. But yeah, that's gonna be the end of this video. This is Will signing. Huh? What's that? Oh shoot, the Orc Theoretic has found me. You'll never take me alive!